Sure. My name is Oren Zamir, and I drive the Lamborghini Huracan. The 610 4 version means it's an all-wheel drive, and yeah. Growing up in Israel, I was always into like quads and you know motorcycles, and it was always something to do with motors that I was into. But just Israel is quite a bit more expensive, and when I got to Canada, I all of a sudden had way more access to things that in Israel would be way farther. And yeah, like my first year, I came in '09, and 2 months into the job, of course, here you are, we're very privileged, the economy, the pricing of things, but also the opportunity to make money. And I went and bought, my manager at the time asked me what's a car you want to buy if I was to help you, because I know you're doing so well, you might not understand you have that money coming yet, but I'll help you and let's buy you that. And I'm like, oh my God, really? I would love to have an SUV. And I'm like, a Highlander, and he has no clue about cars. And it's just funny, as an 18-year-old, I was always like, Toyota Highlander, blue, a shiny blue, and that was it, and that was my first car. And I actually bought it on eBay and had it shipped to Lethbridge because we were working in Southern Alberta. So I got it through the States for obviously a good price and did everything online kind of and got the car. And I remember when it was just coming off the truck, and it was just like I was 20 years old and it was my first car. And I was so thrilled about it. And it was a few months later that my boss and everybody around were laughing. They're like, Oren, you can't drive a Grandmobile like that. Like, you got to get a car, a good looking car. And I started looking, and then I went into the Audi A6. And the Islander, for me, it started with cargo and efficiency and all of the things that now I really don't care for. But when they told me you gotta get a nice car, a good car would actually show people that you are successful if you're ever wanting to recruit people. And I looked around and I really loved the Audi A6. And this, we're talking, I think it was an '08 that was my second car. And I was in U of A, and I literally paid my tuition, rent, and a car, and basically went through all my money that I earned that season working for Fluent. And I loved it. Like, that's when I realized, man, the thrill you get from it. And I went, I think it was somewhere in the States, not Montana, but around there, and I drove it back. Right, and it was just such a cool road trip, and you're obviously driving a bit faster than you should, and it grips the road, and I loved it. And from there, it was always, in 5 years I changed 6 cars, I think, and it was always interesting cars to me, right? But the big change was in 2015 when someone told me about the i8, because I always dreamt about the Lamborghini, and since I was a kid I was talking about Lamborghinis. And someone showed me the i8, and I was like, wow, I was stunned by how beautiful it is. And when I looked at it, I'm like, it's quite a bit more affordable than a Lamborghini. And it's so unique, and the look of it. So I called them like a kid not knowing anything. I'm like, hey, am I able to test drive it? And they almost giggled, and they're like, no, you don't test drive these things. And I'm like, really? I'm going to drop, you expect me to drop $170,000 and not test drive it? It's like, yeah, that's how it works with these cars. And I guess I believed them, and just went for it. And they called me because with the i8, it was exciting because you have to wait 6 months if you want to order one. And a week after I spoke with a couple dealerships, one of them called me and he's like, hey, we have an i8 that arrived here. The guy that put the deposit 6 months ago, his financing didn't go through. Do you want it? And I was like, absolutely. And same day, me and the wife jumped on a flight to Vancouver, picked it up. And to me, again, we drove it back to Edmonton. First day, 1,200 kilometers back. And it's the feelings. There's something about it, and I almost like to drive alone more than with my wife or anyone, because like you have your music and you're in the zone and you're holding the steering wheel. And the thing is, the better the car is, I think the more exciting the experience gets, Again, I drive a truck and I drove SUVs, and I just, drive any cars. And when we buy $1,000 vans, I think there's something about driving, but just once you get into the nicer vehicles, it enhances it. It just goes to another level. And that's what I fell in love with the i8. Originally, I got it because I thought, what a good looking car. It's going to definitely help with growth and recruiting business. once I drove it, I started to fall in love with the adrenaline and the thrill. And it was just a matter, the i8 was a mid car kind of, because I knew I'm going to have a Lamborghini one day and I always wanted one. And sure enough, few years go by and I finally was able to buy it. And I'm so happy I did, because the i8 is tamed compared to the Lambo. And it's an experience that I'm feeling privileged, because every day I have it in, in my within reach, let's call it, and waking up, jumping in it, starting the engine, everything about this car is just outstanding. It's amazing, the experience, the thrill, the fun, and I love it. So that's kind of how I went through the cars to the Lambo. So originally, part of being, I think, sales manager and recruiting people is a lot to show that you're successful, because a lot of times people are skeptical, and it's just part of, I think, commission based or running a business. You do need to show some of your success, and it's kind of a hard thing, because I didn't grow up like that. I never grew up being flashy, but at the end of the day, it's part of the business. Because if you go and hire a kid, and you drive $1,000 beater, he's not really going to think, oh, this is a guy I want to be mentored by and taught. So it was always something, hey, have a nice car. And when I grew and made more money, I just realized, okay, now I have managers underneath me. I need to have a very nice car, that can be one up, because my guys were driving Range Rovers and Audis and super nice cars. And the i8 was just, it was everything together, the price was right. The look was out of this world, I still think the i8 looks more unique than the Lambo, and I find it funny because people still look at the i8 more than they look at the Lambo. When you drive in it, you really notice it, but it was literally as shallow as it might sound. It started by that. But from there, it just transitioned to a whole new world for me. I met a community of supercars, and I loved successful people that enjoy them. And the thrill, the adrenaline, and that I felt, with the Lambo. So before I bought the Lambo, would have been 2 years back. Well, actually, originally 2014, my bachelor party in Vegas, we went on a racetrack, which is such a cool experience, and we all got our supercars and went on a racetrack for 5 laps, And I had the Aventador at the time. And that's a beast, and it costs almost twice as much. And it felt too much. And it was, 3 years later that I was really set on buying the Lambo, and I said I should definitely test drive it. And I came back to the lot, and I rented a Huracan, and I was like, it's funny, this is a better car. Right there, I already started thinking, this is a better daily car. I can drive this in the winter. I definitely would struggle with the Aventador. And after that, I came back again to Great Vegas and ended up renting one and went for a full day with it. And I was just confident at that point that I have to buy it. And 2017 was the year I was supposed to buy it, and I missed my sales goals. So I overlook a lot of sales managers and reps all over Canada, and I didn't hit my goal. It's very important to have goals and then go and do whatever it takes to hit them. And when I missed it, I wasn't knocking doors at the time. I was more in the manager position. That's when I realized, and I looked at my wife and said, baby, I love you, but I'm going to have to go back in the trenches. I think 2018, I need to go back knocking doors, leading from the front, managing. And thank God it worked. We grew 20%. I had a stellar year. And this was the reward of it. So that's kind of how it came about and got to this. For sure, the styling. The styling of Lamborghini is so unique. If you look at it, I'm a big Transformer fan, superheroes in general, and Ferraris are more elegant, more subtle, the round corners. Aston Martin is very elegant, I find. Lamborghini is just a ball, it's so aggressive, and the sharp corners, and I love it. And before that, it was the Gallardo, right? And it was always more of a symbol, and I never connected with the Ferrari brand, and I always loved the Lamborghini, and it was always a blue Gallardo that I had on my wall and such. And when time came, I'm like, why would I buy a Gallardo when this beauty is out? So that's how I ended up with the Huracan. But it was always the look, I would say, that attracted me. I think the brand appeal even, right? When I talked with dealership, the Lambo dealership a few years back, and I asked them, so how come everybody are already going hybrid and electric and you guys are not? I think the concept behind Lamborghini is very cool when they say we believe in the naturally aspirated engine, we believe in the real big force, in a lot of horsepower, and we might one day go electric, but we're just far from it. Even when everybody else already shifted to it, they're like, we're proud of how we do it. And I do like that, Of course, they're going to have to get electric sooner. They're coming with it now, but I do really like that concept about them. I don't know what I don't love about it. My favorite, which is so funny, so the Huracan has 3 driving modes: the Strada, and then you have your Sport mode and the Corsa. Sport mode is bad news in the winter because what it does is it makes 90% of the rear tires instead of 70, which you're gonna be drifting, which sometimes you want to, right? But I love that you have that control. But what Corsa does is it actually changes your car to race mode. I think it's in Italian, and what it means is no longer the gear will shift. So you have to use your paddle shifters. And when you are in that car, the paddle shifters are this big. When they put them in cars wanting to make them like, ooh, I can shift, it's kind of there. In the Lamborghini, it's there. Like, you can't miss it, and that's all you have there. And it instantly puts you into the car a bit more. And when you are in that mode, what's interesting is it actually changes the way the engine sounds. And you probably heard when you downshift in Lambo, you have that ba 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 ba, and it's just the sexiest sound on the planet, I think. And I truly love the sound of it, the way it operates, and the fact that you're in control with the Corsa is quite cool. So that's inside. The interior, it's funny, but it's small things. Like even the red starter, when you have to lift that red button, it's kind of cool. It's just different, but you're like getting into a spaceship in a way, and it's that whole feeling. So I really do love what they've done with the interior. And then the look outside, I always said that Huracan is almost a plain car, but it has so much potential. And that's why I went and bought the spoiler and the rear bumper and diffuser and added the blue liners, because I believe that if you take the Huracan and you play with it, you end up with a one-of-a-kind car. And the funny thing is, if you supercharge a Huracan, you end up with a faster cars in the Aventador. And that's when I realized, so I can pay half, and I can just modify it for another 50 to 100 grand, and I can end up with a faster, more unique, and a daily driven car. I'm sold, and that's kind of how it went. It makes you feel amazing, right? I think the i8 was when I felt like, wow, I really made it to a place where not many people make it. The Lamborghini is just the next level of that, I think. But in general, supercars, and there are people that buy supercars, I think, for... Originally, I was saying I bought it for the look, but I fell in love really fast with the car, the thrill. There are some people that buy them just to own them, right, as a status. And I don't necessarily not appreciate it, but because people don't understand. If someone feels very successful and accomplished by buying something that others won't or don't, right, you got to respect that, because that's almost like his trophy. And you don't really know how hard that person worked and the struggles and challenges that he went through to get there. And to me, when I look at this car, it just... hey, this is a dream coming true. This is something that I've worked toward for so long. Leaving home at 16 to play hockey in Canada. Going home at 19 to go back to the army when they wanted me, And then getting injured in the army, and then coming to Canada because I needed to continue university in Canada. That was originally my goal. But it was age 20 when I realized the potential through Fluent and knocking doors that I changed. My perception changed and said, hey, if I can retire by age 30, this is worth it. And what a lot of people don't realize is you have to make sacrifices to reach those amazing things. Unless you're very lucky and you were born to very rich parents, which I just don't count because I wasn't and most people weren't. But if you're able to dream big and work towards something, and to me it was like, man, if I can commit 10 years of my life, stay away from my family in Israel, live in a foreign country. I didn't plan on getting married here and having kids and staying here, right? To do whatever it takes, knocking doors, get rejected, get laughed at, get turned down, struggle with recruiting and growth. But if I can do whatever it takes and just stay focused, and in 10 years, I can live a life that very few can live, this is worth it for me. And I think the Lamborghini, especially being the fact that I got it when I'm 30 and that was my 10-year mark in Canada, it just ties it all together for me. It's like, hey, you've done it. You dominated what you set to dominate, and here is your joy now. And I'm so happy I made it. Now I'm privileged to the point that I have this, and I can be like, hey, baby, here's the i8, and we can go cruise, in two supercars, and it just out of this world. And I just had a friend come from Israel last month, and it was such a privilege to be able to give him the i8 and be like, hey, let's go, right? And to have him sit in the Lamborghini and drive it, and just to see someone that I grew up with, it's not someone that came because of money or at a later point, but someone way back, and to see his smile and his thrill and thinking, that's awesome, because I did leave home, but thanks to what I sacrificed, now my friends that come visit can experience something that probably not many people can experience. And I 100% plan on continuing to share it with the ones that are close to me. So I gotta ask the question when people ask that, why would you not drive a Lamborghini? No one asks that when you see people driving a Quattro, Audi, or BMWs, right? So the reality of the situation, and I find it funny because people, it's almost ignorant. People don't understand. If you can drive a Quattro or a BMW all-wheel drive or a Mercedes, the same system is in the Lamborghini, just quite a bit better. Now, when Pirelli, if you look at the tires that I have on the car, Pirelli in engineering with Lamborghini. How many winter cars on the road have engineered winter tires for that vehicle? Which tells you, okay, so you have way better winter tires, you have way better grip, you have the best all-wheel drive system because you're paying for it. So now why would you not drive it, right? Now, the reason is because, there is salt on the road and you might get scratched and this. I'm like, if you're buying a car to resell it, which some people do, then you're 100% right. But if you're buying a car to enjoy it, if you're buying a car to use the car, then guess what? Put 3M film on it. Wrap it. You can paint it after 5 years. And it's funny because some people call it reckless. And I'm like, they're just not business minded. Because if you truly think about it, opportunity cost is a big value. I always follow that concept. And if I can drive a Lamborghini for 5 winters, and let's say I did want to resell it, and I'll go and repaint the whole car and do everything it takes, it will probably cost me $10,000. So then you got to ask yourself, $10,000 to $30,000, let's say, was it worth $5,000 a year to drive my car year round? 100%, and that's why when people look at it as why is he doing it? I'm like, they just don't understand. They just don't know, which is fair. And I sure hope I can teach people, because the car has a button that lifts it. How many cars on the road have a button that lifts them? And if you look at an S5, right, and you see this, or even TT, you see is on the road in the winter, they're almost as low, if not lower, than the Lambo. But they don't have that button. So I can clear parkades, I can clear snowbanks. When I need, I just lift the car and off I go. I don't know why people think, this is crazy and out of place, because it's really, if I look at capability-wise, it's the best car in my garage to drive on the road. So then it brings me back to, okay, if you are wanting to baby your car and hoping to resell it the way you bought it, then don't drive it. But why do people drive their Audis in the winter, Because they're going to get the same kind of thing. So then it goes back to, well, Audis are way cheaper. Sure, but the people that afforded Audis, if their focus and goal was to buy a Lamborghini, they probably would have been able to afford that as well. So it just proportions, and a lot of people, I think, love it, and I love them back. And the people that don't respect it, I say, okay, it is your choice and decision, and that's how I'm going to do it, and I'm going to enjoy the way. I kind of budgeted for it, I think, and I figured it will happen, but again, so the bumper didn't break, I cracked it, and I'm driving with it, and nothing happened. But you got to ask yourself, well, aren't you scared that you're going to get into an accident and break your car? Because you have insurance for it, right? Same thing. At the end of the day, same thing. My insurance just costs a bit more, but it's the same thing. If something really bad happened, well, there is insurance. If you drive your car right now, and it happens all the time in Edmonton, and you hit a really bad pothole, and your car sinks in, and you break an axle or something, well, why do you drive? Aren't you scared of these things? So, but I will always say, I am definitely more aware of my driving, because it's going to be expensive to fall into that pothole. But no, it's not going to stop me from driving. So I looked into, twin turbos and everything that you can do to make it. Because again, to me, I'm like, I definitely want to make it faster than the Aventador. And twin turbos are insane. Like, I just saw an article about a 2,000 horsepower twin turbo. The problem is, because I probably would have loved to do it, is we live in Canada. And twin turbos are not as reliable, and especially when it gets really cold, because of the special fuel and the ignition, they just fail. And I looked into it and I realized, okay, that's not worth it to me because I want to be able to use it. So then someone told me what you want is supercharger. Now to me, being that I'm not on a race truck, the instant adrenaline rush that I mostly get is off the line. You're standing in a red light, 0 to 60. How fast can you get it? The funny thing is a supercharger gets you faster off the lines than a twin turbo, which again lines up with what my hope for the car is. So I looked around and there aren't too many options for superchargers, but there is one name that just kept popping up and it's VF. And I looked into it and researched and they've been doing it for a long time. There is a guy in Texas that put 20,000 miles. I talked with him on his Huracan with the supercharger, so it's reliable and it's warranted, and there are guys in Edmonton that will do it, and it just seemed like the right kit. On top of it, sure, once you get it installed, if someone will suggest some modifications to make it even more, I'm probably going to get sold easily, but I don't have anything in particular planned. I'm actually hoping to not change the exhaust because, again, my wife says it's already too loud when I just drive out of the house. So I was born in Israel in a small town called Metula. It's the most northern point in the country. So it's right on the Lebanese border. And what that means, living in Israel, a lot of people always think of Israel as a war zone or crazy. It's not. It's a beautiful country. I lived, it was always very mountainous, and water and creeks and beautiful farming, orchards. Like growing up, in 16 years living there were 2 times that there were wars or bad things. And that's when you would go into a bomb shelter because there were missiles, flying above our heads and sometimes landing. But that's where I grew up, and I got into hockey. It's funny because Metula has a place called Canada Center, and it's the only ice rink in the whole country, and it was a minute walk from my house. So imagine, to put it in perspective, if Devon would have the only ice rink in Canada. That's basically the proportions. But then I lived in Devon, right? So I always went skating, and at age 8, the instructor, because of the school that I was in, they were one of the only schools that had skating classes. The instructor couldn't make it, and the hockey coach shows up as a sub. And he looks at me and says, hey, you're a good skater, you should come play hockey. And I'm 8 at that time, and I'm like, what's hockey? Like, I have no clue, right? It's not something you see on the TV, it's not a sport that you ever find or anything like that. And he's like, thick Russian accent. He's like, oh, just come try it out, And in Israel, it's different because, again, donors from Canada, generous donors gave equipment. So you will actually walk into a room that have all the equipment. And as a kid, you can get dressed up and go try it out. And I did, and I never looked back. I never changed. I loved the sport. And I always played, and at age 13, I started to get involved with the national team. Again, I wasn't anything good like McDavid and the kids here in Canada, but there, it's not as hard to get into the national team. So at an early age, I started to travel playing IHF World Championships and with the national team. And at age, so I was in Canada already at this point for training camps and stuff like that. And at age 16, a former NHL coach came to Israel and saw me play and said, hey, you are way better than anyone else around here. I want to send you to Canada. And that was a dream of its own because at that point in my life, I was like, hey, can I ever make it to the NHL, right? And all of a sudden, a former NHL coach comes and says, I arranged that you can go to Notre Dame, which is a very good hockey school in Saskatchewan, and the school will finance some of it, the federation will finance some of it. Are you ready to make a move and go? So here I am, 16 years old, and facing a big, big decision in my life. And I realized I will never forgive myself if I won't give it a try. And at age 16, I left home. I was an only Jewish kid in a Catholic boarding school, flew to the other side of the world on my own. And the first year was rough in a way, assimilated and getting accepted, but I'm so happy I did it, And when I graduated Notre Dame, I just continued the journey with hockey and went to play college hockey in the States. I never made it to NCAA D1, which was my goal. And at that point, I realized, okay, if I can just use hockey through university, I'm laughing. I did good. But that's when the army in Israel got involved and told my mom, hey, Oren needs to do his service. It's mandatory in Israel. And they said he can finish university and come back, or he can come back and play hockey as an excellent sportsman and go to the army. And both were just not options for me. One, I said, I'm not going to graduate and spend all that resources and money to maybe go die in the army. And I'm not going back home to play hockey because hockey sucks in Israel and I left because of it. So to me, it was like, if I'm going back home, I'm going to do the army right. And it's something about growing up in Israel where everybody fought for you. When you grew up, right, other people protected you. So to me, it was like, I'm going into combat. And I got in, and it just, you never know how life throws things at you, you know. And sure enough, after I left North America and thought, okay, I'm back home, and I was gun hose for the army, like I was ready to be an officer and whatnot, and you get injured, and all of a sudden you're a liability, and all of a sudden the army exempts you, and now you're in a spot in life that you definitely didn't anticipate, because Israel tells me they don't transfer my education from Canada, and I'm like, I'm already here and I just got back with my family and all my friends. And what do? And I, again, made a decision, you know what? It's time to get back to Canada, no matter what, to continue my education so I can transfer it to Israel at least. So I had to find a job to make money. That's how it all started. And I heard of selling alarms through a friend that have done really well. And it's a summer job, which was really good for me because I wanted to go to university. And I took a leap of faith, you know, and I've never done sales before. It was just the grit and the hard work and never giving up and knowing I gotta make it work. And I did. And I was 20 when I ended up back in Canada in 2009, you know, and things were great. Like, it just went well. And after my first year, the owner of Fluent obviously came and met me, and then things started taking off, and he suggested I try to grow into manager. It's not a job where you're handed anything. Growing into managing means that you need to start hiring and recruiting and train, and then you're also going to manage them in the summer, which means you're selling, knocking doors, but you're also going out there and actually training people and motivating them, and a lot. And that was the first time in my life I felt like, man, this is consuming all of me. I've always been very capable of a lot of things, but this, like, the more you put into it, the more you're going to get. Commission-based, which is what I love about it. And yeah, I was 21 and I made way more money than I even dreamed of. And at 21, thanks to the owner of Fluent, who is my mentor, Graham, I realized I can start investing and retire by age 30. And that's where it started. So at 21, I bought my first house in Edmonton, and then went back to university, you know, made well over 6 figures and went back to school because that's the right thing to do. And it was only on my third season with Fluent that I ended up dropping out of U of A because I was in business. And I felt like I'm learning so much more about business by doing business than listening in class. And every day I was knocking doors. I was selling alarms to people that run businesses. And when you're in a sale, it's very interesting because you're in control. And you can ask them questions and you can learn from the people you're talking with. And it was awesome. And I was just learning and growing and advancing. And it was 2015 that I finally got to a point that I can stop knocking doors. So 6 years later. And now I was managing multiple teams. And the owner was terrified because at the time no one ever stopped knocking doors and the region kept growing. And we did good. Things worked out. And that was 16. After that, he left to the States to grow the business. And he said, Oren, I'm confident in letting you run Canada. And that was a huge privilege and, of course, compliment. And things been good. And then 17 is, again, life throws things at you. You know, all of a sudden, the great growth and amazing easy route, or I shouldn't say easy, but we didn't grow and we had a rough year. And that's when you gotta do what you gotta do. And in 2018, at 30, with 2 kids and a wife, I went away for 4 months. And I'm talking away for 4 months. I seen my family twice, I think, and they came out twice. And I made it happen, you know, and I love the fact that when you need to make it happen in this line of work and in this industry, it's really up to you. Commit to it, make the sacrifices, go and work. And I don't think I know I'm not the most talented sales rep. I know I have reps that are way more skilled and talented than me because they outdo me. But I just outwork him. And that's when I feel I'm in control and I love it. Sure, so Fluent Home, we used to be called Titan Alarm. So when we started in 2010, the owner, Graham, who is from Camrose, and he lived in Edmonton, we used to work for big American outfits. And he realized they're just not giving customers the service level that I want and the experience. And guys, I think I can leverage all my real estate and actually create Fluent. And we all jumped on board. We were so confident in Graham, and he said it's going to be a bumpy road, and it's such a cool concept when you have a guy that is capable and can bring the assets, I would say, the capital, but he's bringing it to you and says, I want to make this decision together because we're going to grow it together. And I was there at 2010 at that meeting, and we decided we're doing it. And it was a bumpy start, but sure enough, it's crazy. And now Fluent is Canada's largest privately owned alarm company. We operate all over Canada. We operate in the States, in multiple states, and we sell home automation and security. And it's very amazing to watch how in the end of 2010, 2011 was the first year we were actually operating, to today, 2019, and we built a $200 million company. And it's kind of cool how it all came together because it's the same friends, the same core group. It's funny because Graham dropped out of university, the CEO, Kim, dropped out of university, I dropped out of university, and Shalev never went to university. And that's like kind of the top of the company. But what it was always about was we have two customers. One is our customers that have to have a better experience and good service, and goes to things like where we guarantee warranty and such. The second customer, and that's just thanks to Graham who made it, is the employees, right? The sales reps. And it's amazing to work with a boss like that and a culture like that because he created Fluent charity trips. So every year the whole company, 150, 250 employees go abroad. We're just in Bali, before in Vietnam. So that's just amazing because in 10 years with the company, I live my own travels through the company. I've been to 10 different countries on charity trips as well as just an awesome fun trip, right? Then the concept of he wants to be close with everybody. So he visits, we're talking a guy that now runs a $200 million company, and he visits each employee, right? He meets everybody. It's still that small family company that allows people to get mentored and grow. And at the end of the day, you're going to have to sell, right? Everything sounds amazing, but you need to sell. And selling is all about work ethic, because you talk with enough people, someone would like you, someone would be interested in the product, and you can't let the no's and the haters and everything in the way get in your head. But as long as you can keep going and you can stay focused on a bigger concept, which is usually goals, and the Lamborghini was my ultimate goal, I find that this industry and this job is just the best vessel. And the product is awesome. Because what happened now, 10 years later, I can tell you, I've had a lady that called me 3 years after I sold her. And I don't want to sound like a douche, but you don't remember. And when you sell thousands of people, you don't. But she calls me and says, Orange, thank you so much for selling us this alarm system and pushing that medical pendant. And I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, hubby was outside gardening on a hot summer day and he had it. And he had a heart attack and he clicked on it and it beeped inside. And I ran and helped him. And the ambulance showed up and they saved his life. And you hear on the lady's voice. And I'm like, oh my God, and thank God I sold her, 3 years ago. And as a manager, I have the privileges of hearing other guys' stories that work underneath me, where a dog was left at a house and a fire alarm went off and called the fire department or texted or called the neighbor, and they just came and opened the door and the dog came out, and dog is just part of the family. So you see all these stories and it's like, man, we're doing amazing financially, very privileged there. We're selling a good product that hopefully people don't need to use, but when they do use, they love it, and it's a big, big difference, life-saving sometimes. And then now with home automation, it's a lot into convenience, and you see that all over, controlling your lights from your phone, your garage doors from your phone, your thermostats, your locks. So it's kind of a very cool industry, because I think that's where the world is going anyways. Now I just got shutters in my house for the windows, and sure enough, I can tie it into our alarm system. So it's like, everything is getting automated. 10 years from today, you're going to be able to do everything in your house on your phone. And they're talking about how the industry, it used to be the alarm industry, now it's the smart home automation industry, is just booming and exploding. And I'm that's kind of who we are and what we do. And I'm very happy that I landed on this opportunity when I was 20. It's funny because it's not who. Originally, what pushed me is what happened. And it's crazy because when my grandma died, I experienced my mom and her brother getting into a vicious fight, let's call it, okay? And that fight led to them not talking for 10 years. And I was a kid at that point, and I just said, looking at from outside, that no matter what it's going to take, I want to create a life where money would never get in between me and my family. I would rather walk away from any inheritance that says, here, you guys take it, than ever fight with my sisters. I have 3 sisters. And that was the beginning of everything. That, hey, I need to be wealthy enough that I would never need inheritance to the point I'll actually fight with people over it. And that's what always pushed me toward that concept of, hey, you need to be an entrepreneur. Because when you're looking to make money, right, there is really three ways. Working for someone and being told what you're worth and how much you can work, right? Being in sales, which is commission, so you technically have your guidelines, but you can really do as much as you want because it's up to your production. Or being a business owner, an entrepreneur, where it's kind of sales as well because there's no money in business unless you're selling. And I always knew that I'm going to be one of the later two, either a commission-based, production-based person or a business owner. And Fluent just happened to be the right opportunity because it was all in one. But 100%, one huge influencer is Graham, the owner. So Shalev is the guy that brought me to the job, and he used to play hockey with me back in Israel. We're talking 15 years ago. So it was already someone you look up to because he's 4 years older than me. And, his brother was the captain of the hockey team. So it was someone that, hey, I can follow him. And he was, of course, such a talented salesperson, still is. So I learned a lot from him. But he wasn't as far ahead of me as Graham was, and I think it was my second year that Graham started to see value in me, and then he got closer. And it's funny because now we're best friends. Like, I am sharing so many of my craziest experiences in life with the owner of this company and my best friend. And he made it happen, because when I made a lot of money my second year, it was him who came and said, Oren, you have to buy a property. And I'm like, but Graham, I don't even live here for 8 months. Why would I buy a property? He's like, Oren, don't argue, just listen to me. I know what I'm telling you. And sure enough, I did, and I bought a property, and today, it's my most profitable property. And everything made sense once I had it. And he is the one that put me on track. And he's the one that connected me originally with the realtors. And it was that little mentorship and connector sometimes that's priceless, right? And if you take that and you have a good group of people around you, and you have a lot of positivity, and you have a vessel, a path that can get you there, amazing things happen. So I would definitely say, Graham, as far as business goes, as far as development, it's definitely, a combination, because growing in Israel, I think, had it to it, and then my parents, who I love forever and respect because they're such hard workers and dedicated and honest. I think that's the biggest thing I can tell about my parents that I do. Then it was crazy how many things affected it. Then I had Notre Dame, a boarding school on your own playing hockey that taught me grit and work ethic and discipline. Then I had the Israeli army, which slaps you to place, and shows you that nothing is impossible. Because you end up walking for 70 kilometers, and then right at the end, when you think you're done, they open a stretcher and make you walk 5 more kilometers. It makes you realize the sky's the limit. And then I came into business. So I really had luck, in a way, if you want to call it luck, that I had all these things happen to me through life to make me who I am. But I'm very grateful they did. And I think now my job is really to share these things and try and pass the knowledge to the people that are underneath me, that even though they didn't crawl in the desert and go through that crap I did, they can at least hopefully get inspired and understand the concept and teach themselves to grow that path. Don't fear to dream. It doesn't matter that no one drove a Lamborghini before me in the winter, because I knew it's possible and I went and made it happen, right? People have to have dreams in order to have motivation follow. It's really a question of, am I dreaming and motivated and trying to make things happen? And I find a lot of times people just bounce around. Millennials in general, they just seem to have their hands in 5 different jars, hoping that they're going to find that one night, overnight opportunity, and they're going to take off. Where find something that makes you money, Find something that you can make more money growing, right? Whether it's a job that you can see yourself advancing in the company or anything. But have those goals and aspirations that will keep you devoted and motivated to grow. If you don't, you're floating. If you don't have goals, you are floating in the world. And when I say you're floating in the world, you're hoping that the world and the current will get you to where you want. Instead of taking responsibility, taking accountability, and saying, I am going to get there, you're hoping that the world will get you there. And that's a problem, in my opinion, because when people say this is not fair, whoever taught you that the world is a fair place? Merit base is the society we live in. If you're going to outwork others, if you're going to be better than others, you're going to get compensated for it. If you have dreams, they usually motivate you to be the better performer and to push harder. And if you are not on the path that takes you, or at least positions you on the direction of your dreams, ask yourself, how do I put myself on a path that can hopefully get me there one day? To me, it was sales and commission based, and I took off with it. It doesn't have to be that, but each person owes himself the opportunity to really, hey, those are my dreams. How do I at least put myself that I can reach them one day? And I think when you have these dreams and somewhat of a mega plan, let's call it, you're automatically going to think, okay, flipping burgers in McDonald's is not going to get me there, so I can work in McDonald's. Don't get me wrong, I love people that work in McDonald's because they work in McDonald's because they're going somewhere. They're making money on the way to their dream. You're not going to McDonald's to stay there for your life, but you're going there to make dues. But if you work in McDonald's and you have a plan, okay, I'm working in McDonald's, but at night I'm actually reading online and I'm learning marketing, or I'm going to university through going to McDonald's to get to the path that can get me to my goals. That's what people need to learn to focus on. They have to be able to position themselves in a path that can get them there eventually. And that will be my biggest advice, because if you're not doing it, well, you're a floater. And I would assume that 1 out of a million floaters end up where he wants to be. The rest of them don't. But if you look at how many people set goals and have a plan and actually go and do whatever it takes to get there, it's way more succeeding stats, I would think.